So before we start the talk here, let's do some kirtan, okay? And then shortly we'll begin my presentation. Jaya Radha Madhava Kuja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. So when I was first approached to do this talk, I had to sort of think about, well, which avatar am I going to do, right? So I sort of wanted to take a unconventional route here and talk about an avatar that, we don't really discuss or talk about or Buddha that much in the Hare Krishna movement. We acknowledge him, we respect him, but he's not really part of the tradition, right? In the sense that we talk about other incarnations and we observe their appearance day and fasting and all that. So I sort of wanted to shed light on this incarnation. And the other thing that sort of motivated me to talk about Lord Buddha was, just look around what's going on in the world today. I mean, Buddha Bhagavan was all about compassion. And I think that's one thing we're lacking in the world today. We just look at what. And actually, I did learn a lot about Lord Buddha's avatar and why Krishna came in Kali Yuga. Because when Lord Buddha incarnated, Kali Yuga had already been around, I think, for 2,000, 2,500 years, something like that. Lord Buddha's avatar was well into Kali Yuga, and you sort of have to look at circumstances historically of why he came. It was a time when a lot of people were using the Vedic Shastras, the authority, to commit animal sacrifices for their own sense gratification. So a lot of the interpretation of the Vedas and the Vedic scriptures had gone awry, and people were basically using the authority of the Vedas for their own sense gratification. So Lord Buddha's incarnation was to sort of right that ship and say, before you follow any shastric injunction, before you follow any scriptural injunction, you've got to have some compassion for your fellow living entities. Because without that, all religious systems, all religious beliefs just become performative. They're just a show then, you know, and it become materialistic. And then the other point is, how can we, as Vaishnavas, what do we take away from Lord Buddha's teachings? So why this topic matters? We always look at avatars through Shastra, right? I mean, the Lord manifests in different avatars. They're unlimited. We're talking about the 10 here, the 10 main ones, but his avatars are unlimited across unlimited number of universes. There's no accounting. There's no way to keep track. So the only way to really understand the avatar is through Shastra. And Lord Buddha is actually included in the 10 major avatars. I think he's the next one after Lord Buddha is Kalki. And I don't think anybody wants to be hanging around here that long or come back to witness that, right? It's the end times. And I think all major religious systems talk about some sort of avatar coming at the end, right? Every religious tradition or philosophy in the world has some reference to that. So Lord Buddha came in the beginning of Kali Yuga to sort of try to save people and try to inject some compassion back in the world so it could eventually pave the way for bhakti. So Lord Buddha's incarnation served a purpose in the grand scheme of things, which I'm going to get into. And also, Krishna can come in different forms and exhibit different activities in different cultures, time, place, and circumstance to fulfill unique missions. So every avatar is different in terms of why it comes and what the objective is. So there's actually a lot of scriptural references to Lord Buddha's incarnation. I just took a brief few examples here. There's more than that, actually. I don't think, he's only mentioned in a couple of different places, but he's actually mentioned in a lot of places. And actually, Srila Prabhupada makes many references to him throughout his teachings, throughout the different scriptures in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the purport, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and also I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Dasavatar Stotra, where there's a prayer to each of the 10 incarnations, and there is one verse dedicated to Lord Buddha that praises his compassion for living beings. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.24, I'm just going to read the translation here. Then in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjane in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theist. So he really wanted to stop the animal sacrifice that was going on the basis of Vedic injunctions. And to do that, he had to delude people and to say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't follow the Veda. I mean, think about how bad things had become, where he had to come down in an incarnation and basically say, don't ignore what I wrote, right? Don't follow the Vedas anymore. Just forget it. Because they're using the Vedas to justify animal sacrifice. So this is how bad things were when he came. So you have to look at it from that lens when you look at his teachings and as to why he was saying, don't follow the Vedas, right? So, and Srila Prabhupada also talks about in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Madhya Lila, 20th chapter, about how Lord Buddha is actually one of the 25 Lila incarnations, and how each one of these incarnations comes for a specific purpose to deliver a specific message at a particular time. And of course, everybody's familiar with the Dasavatar Stotra, where he talks about the compassion of Lord Buddha. Nindasi yagya vidher aha shruti jatam sadaya hridaya darshata pashughatam keshavadhirta buddha sarira jaidakadishare. So he's praising Lord Buddha for being compassionate to animals and to living entities. So a little bit of historical background here. His appearance, Lord Buddha's appearance, was around 500 BCE in Gaya. Actually, it was in Nepal, but a lot of his activities took place in Gaya, and I think he achieved enlightenment in a place called Bodh Gaya. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that tree is still there, where he achieved enlightenment, and it's a pilgrimage site for Buddhists all over the world. And so, Lord Krishna incarnates himself in every yuga, in every place when there's a decline in dharma and a rise in a religion. And his sole objective for this avatar was to restore ahimsa in the world, in Vedic society, and also in the world at large, and to stop this animal slaughter that was specifically using the Vedic injunctions, and to elevate people's consciousness by re-emphasizing compassion. So let's talk about a little bit about the early life of Lord Buddha. He was born as a prince, actually, in a royal household, and he had all the trappings that you normally would expect of a prince: luxurious life, servants, not wanting for anything. And if you read about his life, his father was very protective. His whole family was very protective of him, and that they didn't want him exposed to any of the troubles of the outside world. So no concept of what suffering was, right? Up until he reached a young age, and he was raised in luxury. He was shielded from suffering. But there was a prophecy. I think it was the family astrologer who had predicted either this personality will be a great ruler or he will be a great spiritual teacher. And so I think his family was afraid that he was going to go off and become a spiritual teacher, and they shielded him from that. Said, no, we're gonna make you a great ruler. We're gonna keep you locked up in this palace and indulge yourself, whatever, right? Don't go out. And so the significance is, although he appeared like a prince, and there were no outward signs that he was the supreme personality of Godhead, he specifically entered into this role to show the world compassion by how his life unfolded from that point onward. So, and what happened one day, Lord Buddha, he got curious. Siddhartha got curious. Well, what's out there? And took his charioteer and said, I want to go out in the city. I want to explore. And so he encountered 4 things that really made him question his life and his upbringing. He saw an old man. He had never seen an old man before. So he saw all people age, they get old. He saw a sick man. He'd never been exposed to sickness in his life. He saw a corpse, death. He'd never experienced that. He'd never seen it. And then he also saw a wandering ascetic, a person who was in the renounced order of life. And so he saw all this suffering going on around him outside of the palace walls, and it really opened his eyes up. He's like, well, what is all this? Why are people going through this? And so what we can take out of this is what he went through in his life experiences. This was all part of a divine drama or a leela, which these experiences helped him it got him on a path where he would reject materialism, and he would reject all these things that were going on in society, and lead people away from the cruelty that they were engaging themselves in for the purposes of sense gratification. So at the age of 29, he left his palace life. In the middle of the night, he got up and his wife and his young son were sleeping. Didn't wake them up, said his goodbyes, and he said, I'm gone. I'm out of here. This is not the truth, the kind of life that I'm leaving right now. I want to find the truth. I want to know what this life is about. Why do people suffer? Why does suffering going on? And so he sought the truth through severe austerities, through severe penances in forests, and sitting there when it was really hot, when it's really rainy, when it's really cold, just putting himself through all this physical suffering to find out what is the ultimate truth, what's the ultimate aim here, right? And so after years of penance, he realized that the extreme path is also not the answer. Making yourself suffer in an extreme way is not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to increase your suffering, right? But indulgence is not the way either, which is where he had come from. So what is the way then, right? And so then in Buddhism they talk about the middle way, the middle path, where you're not in one way or the other. And so Lord Buddha is demonstrating through his renunciation and when he went through, how to really detach yourself from the material world, how you detach yourself from the illusion, because both extreme paths can make you deviate from the spiritual path, right? Either too much indulgence or extreme renunciation. And so then while he was, and I'm not going to get into all the details of this, but while he was meditating under the Bodhi tree, the Bodh Gaya in Bihar is where he achieved enlightenment, right? The truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. And the way to end suffering is through a disciplined practice of detaching yourself from attachment, from craving, for the desire for things, the desire to enjoy. Because that's the cause of suffering, is we want to enjoy things, or we want to indulge in our senses. So now he's called the compassionate incarnation because his topmost philosophy at that time, and you have to understand, the age he was born, or the time he was born, that nonviolence and compassion are supreme virtues, that they supersede any sort of scriptural injunctions or teachings. You have to be at a baseline compassionate and nonviolent person to proceed on the spiritual pathway. And he opposed animal sacrifice, emphasizing kindness of all living beings, and telling people, look how happy they are when they're not subject to suffering and the subject to your own people's whims and desires to satisfy their own tongues. These are actually living beings who have a right to live their life. And so he was condemning animal slaughter out of a sense of deep compassion, and he wanted people to return to that compassion. So that was the mission of Lord Buddha, his passion for all beings, karuna, right? Opposed to the misuse of Vedic sacrifices that were the Vedas were being used to justify animal sacrifices. Because, if you think, there are sacrifices in Vedic literature involving animals, and back in the day in Satya Yuga and Treta Yuga, they used those sacrifices as a way to demonstrate the potency of the mantra. And what happened is the animal would be either reborn or it would achieve a higher life. But in the present age of Kali Yuga, these practices had been corrupted, and people were using those same Vedic mantras to justify sacrificing the animals and then to eat them and satisfy their tongue, right? And so he also rejected this corrupted ritualism that had crept into society at that time. and introducing simplicity in spiritual thought and simplicity in how you conduct yourself, and really establishing a foundation for nonviolence, sort of setting the stage for later avatars to come and introduce bhakti. So from a Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective, we understand Lord Buddha as the incarnation of Krishna, and he temporarily concealed Vedic authority or rejected Vedic authority so people could get back on track and discover compassion. That's how bad things had gotten. And his overarching aim was to protect true dharma, which is compassion for all living beings, and stopping adharma in the name of religion, which, if you look at nowadays, is happening a lot with all religious traditions all over the world. And really, he paved the way, actually, for the bhakti revival. Because if you're not compassionate toward the living beings, you can't practice bhakti. If Lord Chaitanya had come at a time when rampant animal sacrifices had been going on, it would have been very difficult to convince people, because people were so caught up in enjoying themselves and killing other animals. So he laid the groundwork for that in society. And then, he did that by rejecting the Vedic authority, and then later on, Shankaracharya came by and reestablished Vedic authority, albeit in an impersonal way, so then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could carry out his bhakti mission. So if you look at it from a long view, each one of these avatars sets the ground for the subsequent avatar to come and build on that. So. Okay. Are they watching the Browns game? Maybe they're not doing well, so that's a reaction. I don't know. Compassion versus dharma. So the topmost philosophy in Buddhism is ahimsa paramo dharma, non-violence as the highest duty. And so for devotees in our tradition, that means that is a step, is a foundational step that leads you back to bhakti, right? You have to have some preliminary groundwork covered. You have to have some conditioning in order to get on the path to bhakti. And so Lord Buddha's compassion actually aligns very nicely with Krishna's ultimate plan, which was to introduce bhakti as the ultimate goal of life. And so this is a very nice picture that I took off of Google. And Gautam Buddha was very clear about this injunction to his followers. Meeting in any form and in any manner and in any place is unconditionally and once and for all prohibited. Meat eating, I have not permitted to anyone, and I do not permit, and I will not permit. He had to go to that extreme step just to set the stage. So if we look at the legacy, actually Buddhism, was born in India, but it's spread all over the place. And actually it is practiced more outside of India than in India itself. If you look at the Asian countries eastward from India, right, starting from Nepal, Myanmar, Thailand, China, Japan, Southeast Asia, it's mostly some form of Buddhist culture along with the indigenous cultures, right? And interesting thing is, if you look at the culture of Japan and China and Southeast Asia, even in their Buddhist teachings and cultures, there are elements of Sanatana Dharma in there. And very interesting that the picture that I took here, actually, my sister was in New York this week, and she went to a Thai restaurant, sorry. And she noticed a picture of Goddess Durga there at the restaurant. And she asked one of the staff, she's like, do you guys worship Goddess Durga in Thailand? And they're like, yeah. We worship Goddess Durga and Lord Ganesh and Krishna and all that. So Buddhism had an indirect effect of spreading some element of Sanatan Dharma beyond India's borders. Because, Buddhism is an outgrowth of Sanatan Dharma, so it's interesting seeing that in other cultures, right? I think even in Japan, there's temples to Lord Ganesh and Durga and all that. They call them by a different name, but the idea is the same. The concept is the same. But from our perspective, there were basically two goals for Lord Buddha. One was to stop the violence that was disguised as religion, and we're seeing plenty of that nowadays. And the other was, to a long-term mission, was to prepare the groundwork for the restoration of bhakti, which at first Shankaracharya established a Vedic authority again, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spread the bhakti movement, right? So oftentimes people tend to view, out of all the incarnations, people tend to view Lord Buddha as sort of like this aside thing, right? You have all these incarnations, you have Lord Buddha who, okay, Krishna came as Lord Buddha and whatever, and then we move on to the other incarnations. But if you actually look at his life and what he preached, and you look at the long view, his mission was very integral to Krishna's plan to reintroduce bhakti in Kali Yuga. And then, Srila Prabhupada, if you look at his teachings and literature, he talks a lot about Lord Buddha in different places, and acknowledging Lord Buddha's role as a divine avatara in rejecting Vedic authority outwardly to protect people from hypocrisy, religious hypocrisy. So we respect his path as Vaishnavas, but for us, bhakti is the ultimate culmination, right? You don't stay at the first step, you progress on. That's the foundation, and you progress on. So that's the lens through how we look at the ninth incarnation of Lord Krishna. And so, if you just have ahimsa as a rule, is good, but it's incomplete in terms of getting out of this material world. Believing in ahimsa alone will not liberate you from material bondage, but it's a necessary step in order to progress further. So how do we integrate this with our bhakti tradition? Well, by emphasizing compassion. And Lord Buddha represented compassion. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu represents prema, or love of God. And so our philosophy is respect Buddha, but follow Lord Chaitanya for the highest path, right? Both incarnations are the same Lord. They're Lord Krishna in different forms, and for different time, having a different message, but building on that. So, and so in concluding, Lord Buddha Bhagavan is part of the 10 avatars of Lord Krishna, and his mission was to establish nonviolence and compassion, and it's actually a divine strategy for pure bhakti. And the Lord appears at different times, different places throughout the universe, not just on this earth planet, but there's unlimited number of universes where the Lord will appear in different forms to propagate bhakti, or to prepare the conditions for bhakti to come later on. And so I think this verse, this Avatar Stottra verse, very much sums it up very nicely. Does everybody want to sing this along with me? Yeah. So Nindasi Yagya Vihir Ahashruti Jatam Sadaya Hridaya Darshita Pashu Ghatam Keshavadhirata Buddha Sarira Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Okay. So any questions?
I don't have a question. I just, historically, it seems Krishna has sent these personalities and these Krishna-avatars and these pure devotees at times when we really need them. And they were strong enough at the time to change the mindset of humanity, you know. I mean, they really made an impact to today. I just pray and I have faith that Krishna will send somebody in this time now, a strong spiritual person or somebody that we can follow that this world needs right now, to change the mindset of what's going on in this world. And like you said, compassion would be a great place to start because everybody seems to be losing it.
Oh, exactly.
So, and I have faith that Krishna is going to send somebody, because right now there's just nobody.
Nobody. Yeah.
There's no spiritual personality or anyone to follow right now. They're all following these demons. You know, and if there's ever a time for Krishna to send a pure devotee, is now.
Yeah, that would be a good time, right? I agree with you. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
We need to pray for that.
Yes. Yeah. We live in very dark ages, and it seems like every year, even every few months, things get darker and darker. Yeah. So. Yes.
So I have a question. First of all, I want to thank you so much because I could never understand the Buddha and Krishna. I couldn't understand it, and you have explained it just perfectly.
Thank you. I learned a lot too, because I one of the reasons I took this on is I want to know more about Lord Buddha. How does he fit into all this, right? So, yeah.
And I wanted to mention that one of the things that people think a lot of, like, nonviolence is, you know, animal slaughter and different things, but years ago, most of you here know who Mother Krishnandini is. She explained to me something that really was so profound, that it's not violence also includes, like, putting people in anxiety.
Yeah.
And I always try to think about, you know, before I, like, maybe talk to my children, my husband, certain people, if it's going to be something that's kind of heavy, you know, should it really be said? Is it going to put someone in anxiety? And especially, I know all of us are on our phones and, you know, spewing our stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's really important that we're careful about what comes out.
Yeah.
So we're not spreading the violence of our tongue.
Yeah. No, you get an excellent point, because violence is not just confined to weapons or hurting somebody physically. We commit violence on people around us through how we speak, how we behave, and also we commit violence on ourselves by how, and you know, what the Bhagavan Lord Buddha really explained that, or demonstrated that very well. It's like, listen, you go any extreme and you're committing violence on yourself. And you know, Lord Krishna talks about in the Gita, too little sleep, too much sleep. Too little food, too much food. Overindulgence is bad. Well, extreme asceticism is also bad, right? So we're committing violence on ourselves. We're committing violence on other people. We're committing violence on the environment. All these living things, all this is Krishna's creation. So yeah, that is a very good point.
Yeah, well, I like the